So here I am. I graduate from undergrad. I come back home,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my sisters, one of my sister Shamam, her best friend at the time, they're like 3 or 4 years older than me. We're
Mm-hmm.
going out. We're playing basketball. There's a mutual interest, right? So we're playing basketball, and she says, "Well, what type of father, what type of husband do you want to be?" I was like, "Oh, that's easy. My dad." No, no hesitation, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, "You know, your dad has a mistress.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have a little brother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have this. You know, you have that." Like what?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing that from somebody that's not even in my family.
Yeah.
So this idea who I created my dad wasn't real. Parts of it was real, but there was other parts of it that I didn't have access to, that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately I go home, I'm like, what's going on? Welcome to the Win Love Alliance podcast. We're your co-hosts, Bashea and Tara Williams. The purpose of this podcast is to challenge the narrative, disrupt the status quo, while being a voice of reason for singles, couples, families in the black community.
And for healthy, practical, and unconventional ways to heal, build, and grow your relationship, join us weekly here on the Win Love Alliance podcast. I want to first start off this discussion um, about loving your husband through custody, co parenting, by acknowledging you. Um, Although I've never dated anyone that had children, I do know what a good father looks like from my father, um, and just seeing other fathers function in the space. And I just have to acknowledge for you for being such an amazing father to Nicholas. And I can just think of many examples where I know you not only planted seeds, but you've been able to see them bloom in him. And you just pour into him so much. Um, Not just financially, like emotionally, psychologically, just as a man. And you're a true example of a good man. And I don't know if you hear it enough or you feel it, but you are an exceptional and amazing dad.
Thank you.
And, I appreciate you for that. And I'm sure Nicholas does too. So I want to start off there.
Thank you.
And I know this is has been a long journey for you, an emotional subject. But what do you feel the biggest lesson you learned going through um, a custody battle for your son, where you have joint custody his entire life?
There isn't one lesson. There are many lessons
Okay.
that I continue to learn. Um, One of the biggest things is I never understood why it had to be so hard.
Mm.
It got to the point where I doubted myself. Trying to be a father, was that the right thing to do?
Mm.
When you are constantly experiencing pushback or just pain and attacks for no reason at all,
I am here. I am here.
it's like I don't even give myself the opportunity to be
I have some
vulnerable.
tissue.
Because we talk about vulnerability being a weakness. So having to be strong for myself so I don't give up,
Yeah.
having to be strong for my son so he sees me and also have to protect the people that are trying to hurt me because of how I love him.
Oh, that's deep.
Not knowing what to do, feeling powerless, hopeless, helpless, feeling paralyzed, being punished for being present, for being present. Wanting to see my son, wanting to spend time with him felt like the wrong thing to do because of the response to it.
Where do you feel that response was rooted from? And how did you address it?
I tried everything. When I say I tried, let's start that part over. I tried everything. I tried the passive role, praying for things to get better. I tried to follow the script, understanding where it came from. I tried, no, I'm going to go get my son. But you know, when you try to go get your son as a black man, it's not seen the same. It's not seen the same way. It's not a woman going to get their son. It's not a woman going to get their daughter. It's a man, and let alone a black man trying to go get his child. I'm a threat. My presence is a threat. So I had to walk this fine line of letting things happen, experiencing public humiliation. How do you say that?
Humiliation.
Humiliation, private, like having my son and then going online and hearing you're a deadbeat dad. When my son is with me?
You were awarded joint custody.
I fought for joint custody.
Well, fought and won.
Yeah.
How was that whole process? Because you got to be strong to go through all of that.
And by yourself.
Yeah.
By myself. And I think about, my family and them not knowing what to do. Them also thinking, well, he got it.
Because you're a man. You're strong automatically, right?
And hearing certain things throughout that process and feeling so, again, isolated.
Yeah.
And almost giving up. And I've said this several times. If it wasn't for my son's voice and his words at those lowest moments. And I remember one time we were in my apartment and I read the discoveries and all the things that were said about me. I said, I was speechless. And I was telling myself, let me just give up. And eventually it'll work out. My son came into the room and said to me, out of nowhere, Pop, you're my hero. That vulnerable moment, I had to be strong. I had to be strong for him. I had to be strong for myself. I also had to be quiet.
Yeah.
I couldn't get into the fisticuffs of physically, mentally, in a court system, legal system. It's already pushback
Against you. Set up, yeah.
Walking into the courtroom, the immediate assumption is a black man coming in. The looks you get, I'm like, I'm the one who filed.
Mm-hmm.
But the immediate empathy and understanding goes towards the mother.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to fight that. I have to fight the system. I have to fight just to be present with my son half the time. I'm not trying to take my son from anyone.
Just trying to show up.
I'm trying to show up.
Yeah.
Now I understand there's this part where we didn't have a relationship in order to really understand each other before we had our son. Right? That's a huge part.
Mm-hmm.
I was coming from a broken place when we met.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was operating out of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't feel like I needed to be punished over and over again because of how he came into this world.
Mm-hmm. When you say you were coming from a broken place, share a little bit, like, what that looked like that led you to where you were.
So there's cycles that happens in families.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
There were some moments where there was disconnect when my father wasn't there for a while. Him and my mother were going through different things. I never knew what was going on. I was told that my father was working overnight somewhere. We lived in New York, then we moved to Virginia. Initially, my father wasn't there. There was a hint that I might have a younger sibling.
Mm-hmm.
But time went past. My father eventually shows up. You know, we have somewhat of a relationship. Not as strong as it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the father and son talks about dating, relationships, all that, like women. But in the back of my head, my father's present. And in my neighborhood, because I lived in a hood, in my neighborhood, a lot of fathers weren't around. So I felt like I had it better than everyone else.
Mm.
Everybody else told me and made sure they knew that their fathers weren't there, and at least my father was there. And don't get me wrong, this was not a bad fisticuff type of relationship. We just missed the mark.
Mm.
So here I am. I graduate from undergrad. I come back home,
Mm-hmm.
and one of my sisters, my sister Shamim, her best friend at the time, they're like 3 or 4 years older than me. We're going out, we're playing basketball. There's a mutual interest, right? So we're playing basketball, and she says, well, what type of father, what type of husband do you want to be? I was like, oh, that's easy, my dad. No hesitation, no nothing. She was like, you know, your dad has a mistress? You know you have a little brother? You know you have this, you know you have that? Like, what? So I'm hearing that from somebody that's not even in my family.
Yeah.
So this idea who I created my dad wasn't real. Parts of it was real, but there was other parts of it that I didn't have access to, that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately I go home, I'm like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the what I hear from them, well, we didn't want you to know. We wanted you to be okay. We didn't want to bother you with that. We didn't, like, the whole family knew. And I had no clue of what was going on. So immediately, now I'm broken, but I'm also protective. So now in my head, I have to show my family who let me out of this conversation. I have to show them what a real father looks like. I have to show them what a real husband looks like. Because me and my father didn't have the conversation. My mother didn't give me the information. My sister, nobody told me anything. So I'm devastated, but I got my bootstraps on.
What age? How old were you?
I was about 22, 23. So this idea of like I'm just graduating undergrad, my plan is to graduate, get married, get the white picket fence, start a family, so
The healthy
business.
way,
Yeah,
right? The
that's
right way.
that's my idea. Like,
Yeah.
but it shifted. But it made sense because when I had heartbreak prior to that, nobody was available. I expected to have a conversation with my father how to handle that, but he couldn't come to me because of what he was going through.
Mm.
My mother couldn't come to me because what she was going through, what they were going through.
Yeah.
So I had to figure that part out.
So moving with that dysfunction, we
Mhm.
call it what it is, into relationship.
Mhm.
So that's what you're saying. You were broken
Mhm.
going into that relationship and looking for that
Family.
family.
Yeah.
You know, I always hear people say you have to really evaluate who you want to have a family with.
Mhm.
Do you feel as though you did that?
Absolutely not. All I saw was a family
Okay.
doing things together,
Mm-hmm.
looking lovely together, having all these fun family functions. We're not having them. I used to see that online or see all my friends and stuff having family functions. We didn't have those. I was desperately wanting that.
Mm.
So that broken part of not having family get-togethers, the broken part of not having family functional, um, I was trying to create it and force it. So there we go. I meet someone,
Mm-hmm.
fast track, create a family. We don't know each other. We had some fun. We don't know each other.
Yeah.
So now, because everything was fun, then real life sets in. The moment we find out that we have a child on the way, a lot of things shifts, regardless of the plan that we had. Because now you have to incorporate other family members, and things started to shift. Part of it because they didn't know me, I didn't know them, but the huge part was we didn't know each other.
Yeah.
We're starting to find out who we both really are.
Mm.
We're finding out who we are and what our broken parts are.
Mm.
And so while I'm desperately doing anything to have family, there's a pushback and there's a rejection. So now okay, let me just see what happens. Okay. I'm monitoring, I'm watching. I'm still hurting.
Yeah.
So I'm hurting from my biological family, and now I'm being hurt from the family that I'm trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am in the middle experiencing it, and I'm hurting myself.
Yeah.
Because there's a level of responsibility
Yeah.
that I needed to take,
Mm-hmm.
and I also punished myself for years for that. But even with that said, I never wanted my son to experience anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And going through the court 3 or 4 times because, there's a threat that he's being taken away, they're moving or whatever it is, when there's a clear court order that's supposed to protect me from that, it was a process.
Yeah.
I remember thinking everything was cool, and our son had a play, and I saw everybody, I said, hey, what's up going on, everybody? Everybody was like kind of short. I was like, okay, what's going on? And when the play was over, according to the custody battle, or the custody orders, he was supposed to go home with me. I walk out to police, and I'm like, what's going on? Why is police at the school? So I'm like, okay, formality. Let me go get the court order out of the car. Kept it locked and loaded.
Mm-hmm.
Police, here's the court order. Okay, we have that, but we can't enforce it. So right now, who's going to be the most compliant to not have chaos at this school?
I am so sorry.
And my son is crying in the classroom.
Mm.
I want to go a pop-up. I want to go a pop-up. I want to go a pop-up. And me having to go in there and tell them he can't go with me. But I thought we planned this. I thought we were supposed to do this. Yeah, but
Why was that done that night? What was the purpose?
Part of that is the expectation and the idea of I'm in full control, the lack of consideration, the lack of value of the father, the lack of what we went through to agree when something else happens. Like I'm a very agreeable person.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there was a situation, it was like, hey, I got family coming in, can we switch it up? Then yeah, you give me a heads up. Oh, okay, yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, there was so many times where I did not go see my family because of family was in town.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, we're going to spend time over there because I wanted my son to be surrounded by family, by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the passive side, right? Because it's not about me.
Yeah.
My family is here, so we can do something the next day. We can do something the next week.
Mm-hmm.
When you have family coming from out of town, I'm with that.
Yeah.
So there were so many different things where I felt, again, I had to check myself and saying, is this my ego? Am I just trying to prove something? Am I just trying to force a fight just because I can, just because I know I'm right, just because it says it in its order?
Yeah.
Or do I have to give my son what he needs at this particular moment?
And that's what I love about you as a father. You put Nicholas first in everything you do. And it's so honorable and admirable because you see what's important. You're not trying to sway him, or I've never seen you say one negative thing about anyone that's related to him. And I'm sure he sees and experiences that with you. And you're so giving them a good example. But also know that's very hard.
Yeah.
Because as your wife and being present, since 2019 or more in depth with Nicholas in 2020, I've seen some instances where you've had to go through some things, and in my opinion, unfair. But you still navigate and go to compromise for Nicholas, but you also encourage him to make his own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important. You never try to influence his decisions. You support what he wants to do, but also provide facts.
Mm-hmm.
So, just going to, what we're talking about here today, how to support your husband in that whole custody co-parenting space. And I've said before, I'd never dated anyone with children, let alone anyone that had to go through what you have gone through. And my nature, as we've said throughout this series, this season, is I want to come in and fix. I want to help. And don't want to ever see or think it's okay for you as my husband, as a man, as a black father, be disrespected in any way without, hey man, we got to check that kind of. And I had to learn how to navigate that because that wasn't my space to do. And coming in that fixed space, made situations more difficult. Because even though I'm coming in like, oh no, they're not doing nobody can do my husband like that. Are you tripping? Like, but you have been experiencing this for 17 years. So, but also, and we talked about this in therapy, it was new to me. So it wasn't necessarily I had a tool book or, you sit down and say, hey, do this, that, and the other. But I think it's important for, partners when they're realizing they're partners in custody situation, co-parenting situation, and you said this we were talking about this the other day, like ask how you can help.
Here's the part, like nobody really understands the experience of a black father in America.
Yeah.
Especially a black father that's present And we even get to the point where sometimes we say we don't need to be acknowledged. I'm just doing my job.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
You need to be acknowledged. Sometimes we tell ourselves, I'm not going to fight for my child because the system is against us. She's against us, and whatever it is, and we decide that it's easier to not fight.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also a very hard decision.
Yeah.
To not be involved.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult decision.
Yeah.
So what I had to do is make sure that my relationship with my son was the most important relationship. Not the relationship with anybody else outside of that. Mm-hmm. But we have a strong bond. Mm-hmm. So you know that I'm here even when I'm not beside you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I even created a journal. I started writing to him before he was 1. Mm-hmm. I would write to him whenever there's something I needed to say, something that I wanted to know. I wanted him to know, something that God told me to tell him. I just journal. Mm-hmm. That also helped me process my thoughts and my feelings and my experiences.
Yeah.
But I think I'm glad you said that, because it's important to ask what I need as opposed to jumping in mm-hmm. and trying to fix. Because I don't always need a solution. Sometimes I just need you to hear me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what love looks like through your partner who's going through a custody battle, co-parenting, patience, understanding, and asking them what do they need from you in this space.
Yeah.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh yeah.
What would you tell Black fathers right now? Like, what would you tell Black fathers who are going through custody situations, who have court orders in place, or who are discouraged about fighting? Like, what would you tell them right now?
One of the things I said, focus on the child. They need you, and you need them. I know it's difficult. It might feel like the world is up against you, but there are support groups out there. There are resources out there. I have a father's journal to help you process different things. It'll be in our Facebook group. Get that. Ask. Create community. There's other fathers going through the same thing. So touch base with them. And love. Find different ways to love your child, even through the opposition.
That's beautiful. And I think you just shared a moment ago what this partner can do to show up and be there. And just from a partner in that situation, it is hard. It is tough to see your partner, your husband, hurting. You know, just sitting here today, seeing the tears. I want to just close with, how did you manage to get through all of the things that were said and done continuously? What helped you the most outside of journaling? What helped you the most to really, really keep going and overcome?
My son. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about anybody else. Mm-hmm. It was about him. Mm-hmm. And I knew that he needed me. I knew that he deserved me. And I knew I wasn't going to give up on him no matter what.
Amen. Amen. So fathers out there, head over to our When Love Aligns Facebook group. Join and continue the conversation. Share your stories. Someone, as well as my husband, will chime in, hopefully give you some answers, and pick up the journal to start speaking to your child today. Because as you heard it, and I just want to commend you for that, the focus is on the child. And as partners, we're here to listen and support. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you'd like to continue to be a part of conversations like this, of course, tune in weekly. But head on over to our When Love Aligns Facebook group to stay connected with a community of like-minded individuals, all in the search of healthy relationships.